In the late 1950s, Johnny Smith, the great jazz guitar player, lost his wife. And he decided that he couldn't raise his young daughter by himself in New York City. So he moved to Colorado Springs and eventually opened a music store. Now, in the early 80s, I was able to teach guitar there for about 3 years, and I spent quite a bit of time with Johnny. One day I asked him about reharmonization, and he looked at me kind of quizzically and was like, reharmonization? And we went round and round a few minutes, and finally he looked at me and said, oh, you mean changing the chords. Of course, he was teasing me. And the message he was telling me is, keep it simple, stupid. So that's what we're going to talk about today, changing the chords. Hey, Dr. George here with Jumpstart Jazz Guitar. Jazz guitar for busy adults. Everything you need to know without all the noise. Before we get started, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to click the bell so you'll get notifications when new videos are posted. So what we'll be looking at today is diatonic substitution, changing the chords using different diatonic chords. We'll start out with a very simple progression, 1, 4, 5, and because it's jazz, we'll add sevenths to it. So C major 7, F major 7, G7, and back to C major 7. Now the simplest way to change the chords is to add color tones. And we've covered that in another video, and if you need to review that, you might want to check this one out. So to the C major 7, we could add a 9th. And then maybe to the F major 7, we'll add a 13th. And we could add a 13th to the G7 chord too, or maybe a flat 13. And back to the major 9, maybe with a sharp 11, or even with a 13th. But we're still thinking about these as being 1, 4, and 5. In order to change the chords diatonically, we group them into functions. The tonic function starts with the 1 chord. It also has a 1, 6. And then it has the 6 minor 7 and the 3 minor 7. These are very stable chords, and they include the 3rd of the chord, but not the 4th. On the other end of the spectrum is the dominant chord. These are very active chords, and of course they start with the 5-7 chord. Now the only other chord that has the 4th and the 7th scale degree is the 7 chord, but we very rarely use that as a 7 chord. And in fact, most of the time, we're going to be thinking of it as a no root 5 chord. So if I play this minor 7 flat 5 and put the G underneath it, it becomes G9. And so this is going to be thought of as a no root 9th chord. And then finally, the subdominant group will have the 4 chord and 4-6, as well as a 2 chord. Now these chords have the 4th, but not the 7th. So they're in between, they're active somewhat, but not as active as the dominant chords. The other consideration is creating strong root movements. Now, the strongest root movement in music is down a 5th. Now, it's important to realize that on a guitar, sometimes that means that it's going to be up a 4th, which is the inversion of down a 5th. It's much cleaner to think about it as always being down a 5th. And it's like following the circle of fifths. If you're going clockwise, it's going up a 5th. Going counterclockwise, you're going down a 5th. So let's put this into play. Our original chord progression is going to be 1 measure of C major 7, 2 beats of F major 7, 2 beats of G7, and then back to C7. Now that's pretty strong root movement. We're going down a 5th here, up a 2nd, and then down a 5th again. But we can make it a little bit more interesting. We're going to take the 4 chord, and we're going to substitute within its subdominant group, we're going to put the 2 chord in there. That's the 2-5-1 progression, the most common progression in jazz. Now there's one more thing we can consider, and that's harmonic rhythm. Harmonic rhythm is how often we change the chords. If we start out with a chord progression where the C major 7 is lasting a whole bar, where the other 2 chords are only 2 beats, and can change that using diatonic substitution to get every chord changing on 2 beats. So with the C chord, we're now going to change to A minor on beat 3. And so now every chord is changing 2 beats, and we've added yet another down a fifth. A to D, D to G, and G to C. Now let's take it one step further. We're going to replace the C, the 1 chord, with a 3 chord. And so now we have 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. And all of these now, down a fifth, down a fifth, down a fifth, down a fifth. Now we have quite a few variations we can play based on a simple 1-4-5 progression. And as long as these don't clash with the melody, and they're pretty much unlikely to do so, you can do that wherever you want. Now, one other way that we can substitute chords is by following the scale and playing diatonic chords. So, for example, if I was going to play a 1-6-2-5 where each chord is lasting a whole measure, okay, so that sounds quite nice, but maybe we want a variation. So maybe we do something like this. Now, these diatonic substitutions will also come into play when you're looking for new voicings. For example, you already know that C major 7, C, E, G, A has the same notes as A minor 7, A, C, E, G. They're just inversions of one another. So what that means is that every A minor 7th chord that you know will also be a C6 chord. And if you add a 9th to the minor 7th chord, it's going to be a major 7th chord, a 1 major 7 chord. The 3 chord is a little bit different in that any 3 chord voicing can be a 1 chord, whether it's just a straight voicing where it'll be a major 9 chord, or if you add the 11th, it'll be a 6-9 chord. But on the reverse is not going to be true. This 1 chord, if it has the root in it, won't work because it's not available on a 3 chord. So only no root 1 chords can substitute for a 3 chord. With the dominant chords, it's just a little bit different, because while any of the voicings we use for the 7 chord can be used as a dominant 7th, a 5-7 chord, the reverse is not true. If we add the G, that doesn't really work on the minor 7 flat 5. Even if we put a B in the bass, it's still going to sound like a G7 with a B in the bass. But don't worry, there are lots of substitutions for that dominant chord. So many, in fact, that it'll have to be in another video. So to review, diatonic chords in major keys are grouped into 3 basic function groups. The tonic group, 1-6, 1 major 7, 6 minor 7, and 3 minor 7. The subdominant group, 4-6, 4 major 7, and 2 minor 7. And the dominant group, 5-7, and 7 minor 7 flat 5. Chords within each group can substitute for each other. Also, 1 major 7 and 1 6 chords are interchangeable with 6 minor 7 voicings, and similarly, 4 6 and 4 major 7 voicings are interchangeable with 2 minor 7 voicings. And then 7 minor 7 flat 5 voicings are the same as no root dominant 9th voicings. So as always, thanks for watching. Please like and share the video, and don't forget to leave a comment or a question down below. You know, learning jazz guitar on YouTube is great. I do it all the time. But if you're just starting out, or if you're just confused, book a free lesson with me. I'll be happy to help you out, and I'll design a custom lesson plan for you that'll help you playing better in 30 days. Just click the link down below in the description. See you next time.